I'm not kidding. I'm fine with that. Okay, good. So we have 3 coffees to bring. I'll ask you if you want milk or not. Otherwise, you'll have the privilege of getting to know Mickey. Is there anybody else who has seen Mickey in person before demoing? Apart from you, Raymond, I told you don't do that. You two have seen him, and you meet quite regularly. Mickey is one of our nicest and closest partners in doing the DACH Roadshow. And now he partners with Raymond to deliver quite a few demos. You will meet with the both of them today. And it's really nice to see things actually working in demos. I can't guarantee that this is going to be the case today. But we usually have really good demos with Mickey, and usually they work. So hopefully we're good to go. You'll see the Agentic platform as it happens. He's actually created something for us today that he has created iteratively in the past as well. So everything is on the menu.
Yes.
I'm happy.
I forgot to grab my water, so if you could.
I'm going to bring the water too. So coffee and water. I'm from service. So in case anybody needs water, just raise your hands and I'll bring whatever needs to be brought into the room. Thank you. The stage is yours, sir. So you have about 30 minutes.
But after 30 minutes, I usually lose my voice, so this is why I need water. Yeah, it's about AI agents, practical things. The title is too long probably, but it's not about the title. It's also not about me, but if you want to connect, I go as DNS Michi online. Also, everything that I showed today might change, so don't treat it as a way to buy things. Yeah, and I want to start with like how we got there. And last year, we already talked about use cases for AI. But there was great feedback from you all, like saying we want to modernize our software and we cannot do it with a single chat prompt and a single interface. Thanks. And we also want to, for example, debug and optimize CI/CD pipelines at scale, not just in a single job log, but really like entire GitLab instance or whatever you're using. And also like automating tedious tasks or boring tasks like generating documentation, improving the onboarding process, or even like secure development and triaging vulnerabilities and also remediating them. We also talked a little bit about custom instructions and how to like make agents behave or make AI behave, and also some sort of intelligent AI context. Platform agents were still in discussion, nobody really had an idea back then, or at least I didn't have an idea back then. And we collected all that feedback, and I would say that will also help influence, or your feedback helped influence the product strategy for this year. Now, from that evolution perspective, I want to get started with Agentic Chat, which is like the next chapter of using a chat prompt. You can still use it in the way you're supposed to be, like to get started with something like how to build and run a program, so like compiling C++ code, or even like packaging Java, or even understand how COBOL works, for example. But also implementation from a regular expression for an IP address. IPv6 is fun to write regex for, and you can use AI for that. Just simple or boring tasks, or even like debugging something. The application crashes, there is a stack trace that's a long log. Why is it happening? How is it happening? And how can I prevent that in the future? There's integration into supported IDEs, Visual Studio Code, JetBrains, also Visual Studio on Windows. So we are good to go here. But the important thing is to recognize what Agentic Chat can do. And the first thing is it automatically tries to fetch avoidable context in that current scope. So it actively searches the repository. When I ask a question, say, I want to have a basic CI/CD configuration, it will actively try to figure out which programming languages exist, pass the README or read the README into context, tries to understand, hopefully the README is good enough, how the project is being structured, and then come up with a proposal of a good CI/CD configuration, so that I don't need to come up with that myself. For example, importing some projects from previous partners or from colleagues that left the company, just ensuring best practices. The other thing to recognize is that agents automatically make edits. They can make edits, but they also will add files when they see fit, which is helpful in the way to say, well, I want to rename something specific, a project, a file, class function, depending on the scope, but also add in CI/CD configuration or git ignore or something else. I also discovered that I can use it for managing dependencies, because sometimes I add dependencies all over the place, and then my code doesn't use it anymore after a while, just to use it for some cleanup, for example. And that way, I can instruct agents for these tasks. The third thing I want to highlight is platform context, so I don't need to copy-paste URLs or understand certain things. If I'm working on a specific issue that I got assigned, I can directly ask, please help me with issue number 3, or more generic, I want to see which issues need my attention this week for this sprint, and then I can focus my work in the IDE and I don't need to have any context switches. I could also use it in a way to say my pipeline is failing, I get the fancy notifications, and please help me fix CI/CD in merge request 22, and I don't need to paste in the URL for that. The context is automatically fetched by that. And last but not least, if you're using vulnerability detection, asking which vulnerabilities need my attention, because there can be plenty of them, especially like languages like C or something, it's easy to create a buffer overflow for certain things. And AI can be helpful in that way to put that into context and help me understand how and why to fix that. Agentic AI can also run commands in Agentic Chat, which is helpful to validate the changes immediately. So when there's code changes proposed, you can, or agents will actively run, for example, CMake to build C and C++ code. You can compile COBOL, which I recently learned, also on macOS with COBOL, but certainly any build tools that are available. I also started writing Ansible playbooks, or learning Ansible, and running Ansible int to validate the syntax right after is super helpful. Or even like running a binary in foreground to validate it's not only building, but it's actually running, which we'll see in a bit in a demo. And if I finish my work, or if I'm confident in that everything works, I don't need to think about creating a merge request or creating a Git commit, because Agentic AI can also do that for me. I can even go ahead and say, from a planning perspective, I want to reason about a new feature, like adding a new sensor, something specific to FPGAs and embedded, and then like after thinking about what is needed, I can ask, please create an issue for me, uses the API calls in the background to the GitLab instance, and creates that issue for me. Similarly to creating a merge request, not only to, I'm a shell user, change to the terminal, git status, git commit, push, whatever, but it's tightly integrated. And everything has an approval, so I get to decide if I approve the command run, and I transparently see what's happening. We'll dive into that now, so some practical use cases to actually use Agentic Chat in the IDE. The challenge here is I've developed a small platform which has an Arduino IoT collector, so we have an Arduino over here which exposes some temperature metrics which we want to monitor. And it certainly has a lot more sensors, but the main focus should be for now, we want to fetch some metrics. So in the best scenario, there's a firmware being uploaded already. It prints the metric number on the hardware, which was actually the most hardest part to implement. And we want to fetch the data from the Arduino CLI. The problem with that is it's broken, or the C++ implementation cannot fetch that, and it terminates with an uncode exception, fancy segfault, and we want to use Agentic AI to help us fix that. In order to do that, I will switch from my slides into the fun part, which is a little bit bigger. This is Visual Studio Code. And what I did before was I tried running the application, and we can see here it's using the Arduino board, which is a different terminal or different TTY, and it's not working. And what I can do now is use Agentic Chat to help me fix that. And I also have an issue assigned for that, so that I don't see this one. So we have some context already on what is needed, and some more rather nice summary, possible fixes, and we can actually reference that and say, please help me fix the issue number 4, and here's some additional context. So going back to the IDE, we'll cheat, copy this prompt here, which says help me fix the crashes. And now the fun part begins, because Agentic AI is not predictable. I need to improvise what will happen now, and hopefully everything works. So it will read the issue into context, which is this item here. Then it reads the sensors, tries to fetch the configuration this time, okay. It is now checking if a config parser exists. I didn't implement any, so it should come to the conclusion. No, that it's not already one. This is new. Maybe I did forget something when I tested the demo before. But actually I did the hard checkout. Okay, let's pretend nothing was there, but it would have created that. And it now does the live edit into the main CPP, which is the main entry point for the program, and continues making the edits. So the idea here is that it actually passes the configuration file, not using an hard-coded value, and also improves the error handling. So it's not throwing at a board, which we can see here, but rather much improve and fix that. Now the next step is it wants to build and test the changes, so it's calling CMake, and we can approve that. And it has run the command and will continue. We can actually inspect what it did run, and we can also inspect the output. So in this case, it reconfigured the project, and the next step it wants to call make to compile the C++ code. We also proved that you can inspect the output again. So you will also always see like what the agent wants to run, and afterwards what the output is. Now I figured out that it's missing something. So the config parser classes are not linked. So the output was basically a crash or an error from make. It's editing the file again. It does a rebuild. Okay, it's great. And then it should come to the conclusion when it runs successfully, or like when it builds successfully. No, it doesn't. Let's inspect that quickly. It ran CMake and make again. It's also, sometimes it does it, sometimes not. And we can see the build succeeded. And this is Claude, by the way. Everything is excellent. And it agrees with me, and I'm like, I'm not trusting you. So I use Agentic AI or AI in a way that it helps me, but I always validate or challenge it in the way that it's like, maybe it doesn't make sense. Now I will try to run it in foreground with the timeout. And I do know this might hang, but let's prove that. So the idea is to run it in foreground. It's actually an endless loop process. Some reason. This is probably the demo effect.
Always.
It wants to do a different approach. So it has some sort of intelligent reasoning behind it with like, it doesn't work, let's try something else. And I think sometimes it also tries to wrap a bash command in a shell command. So it's good to validate what it actually wants to do. And, this worked. So let's inspect that. And it has configuration file auto detection. Now it wants to create a commit and a merge request. Let's see. And now I need to buy me some time while it's thinking.
Do that. And cameras. Okay.
And sometimes I need to say it's slow, it doesn't work, and then it works. No, sometimes it's really like this is reality, sometimes it needs time. And what I can do is calling it out, or I could switch to a different task meanwhile while it's running, of course. If I want to create a commit message, I can't actually see the commit message here. It's relatively long. I can scroll and also expand the file changes. Let's approve that. There are any in the vote, everything works out. It should also reference the issue ID that we had created earlier. Now we want to create a merge request. I can review that, but after a while I'm not really reviewing that, I just press approve. Because it's a merge request, it triggers CI/CD, it triggers everything else, which I already use from a DevSecOps perspective. So I have the guardrails, so to speak, in place. I'm not blindly trusting AI-generated code and put it in production directly, which I wouldn't recommend anyone. So we have the key changes here, and with the merge request, which is actually linked, click on that, and we can see the pipeline is running. And since the pipeline will run for quite a minute or so, I will quickly switch back to my slides and come back later on. But it was a good outcome so that it fixed the crash and was able to fetch something. The next idea would be to take this idea as a home exercise, maybe to add a new feature, not just fix something, but actually implement a new metrics type to be collected and to use the existing source code to kind of instruct Agentic AI. In this case, issue 7 helped me implement that. Same process, same workflow. Another use case for Agentic AI can be debugging or verifying CI/CD. Depending on the use case, whether there's no CI/CD, I can use it in a way to help me add a basic CI/CD configuration or even enhance an existing configuration. But I can also say, well, I don't have caching configured, so everything gets downloaded every time, which makes pipelines rather slow. I can say, please help me refactor the configuration to use proper caching, for example. Or even consider like something like GitOps in a way that I want to migrate from a push-based pipeline to Fluxity with Kubernetes and stuff like that. This is also something the underlying LLMs and Agentic AI can help me. The other thing which is helpful is using the platform context again. When the pipeline has failed, I can ask, please help me understand why the pipeline failed in merge request 16, but I can also be more active or more aggressive and say, please help me fix the pipeline in merge request 16. It will pull up the context again, tries to understand what's wrong, and then continue with the fixes, whether it's the build failing, but it could also be the wrong Docker image, it could be the test failing, something that's not wrong, and I can use that directly in the IDE, and I'm not forced to switch context into the UI again. Just can continue there and get help from it. Maintenance is another use case from like a more modernization architecture perspective. I can use AI to help me modernize old-grown legacy code, which nobody wants to maintain anymore. The person who maintains it retired 10 years ago. For example, analyze COBOL and help me find a strategy to migrate it to like Java or Python. There's certain like restrictions to that with hardware services and other things that are attached, but it can be helpful to get a general understanding how it works, what are the possibilities, and not having to ask an external consultant who costs endless money. And this can be a way to do that for COBOL, but there's certainly different things which you can also test, like C to Rust or C or Modernize C. In that way, I think I've also tested Perl to Python. So if you remember Nagios and Perl plugins and want to modernize them, probably also need to remove Nagios, but different story. And you can actually leverage Agentic AI for help with modernization across the entire repository or across projects. If you consider like running more modernization flows in a way that you, for example, want to modernize from an older C++ standard to 23, maybe in the future 26, you can also use Agentic AI to create a plan, which you then can review, make adjustments, be the human in the loop in that sense, and then define, for example, start small with an iteration on a specific standard like file system. You can review that and it makes the changes. The recommendation is to use this flow for larger or longer tasks, for example, that would take more than 5 minutes. And the expectation is like larger changes, refactoring the entire code base, which can take quite some time. But it's a more refined way for planning and reviewing what Agentic AI would do. And it's one of the many use cases that are provided. But this was a lot about the IDE. One thing that evolved with GitLab over the past year was the platform focus, or the GitLab DACH platform on its own. So the many different use cases we have, from planning, code and documentation generation, code and security reviews, CI/CD troubleshooting, but also efficiency. So like not running pipelines and every time and just waiting for them, or the typical XASD 303, like why are developers slacking off? It's not always compiling, it's always CI/CD, but also modernization, migration, maintenance, things are touched on already. And the idea behind the Agent platform is to run that natively on GitLab platform compute, so using the CI runners in the background, and those agents and flows provide access within Agentic Chat in the UI, so like similar interface like in the IDEs, but also provide an AI catalog as a marketplace where foundational agents are provided, so they are maintained by GitLab, but also the possibility to customize everything, or customize agents and flows tailored to your environments. When you have a specific environment, for example in embedded, which requires IP or something that cannot be shared, it can be a great way to kind of build a custom agent and solve a specific problem on modernization or on debugging or analyzing something. There's also a possibility to integrate an external agent if you're using Claude Code, Gemini Codex, or whatever is out there. So the extensibility part is also a big thing on this platform. Agents in this context are specialized for solving a task. And one of the use cases with Agentic Chat to get started in the UIs is to optimize pipelines. For example, asking what is the most inefficient pipeline. I think I'm standing between you and everything, so let's quickly try that out. I like inefficient pipelines. It's an evergreen topic. So this project has a CI/CD pipeline, and we can actually say, please help me analyze pipelines inefficiencies, or something like that. Send that, and you can also use the Maximize panel in the new UI, kind of to get Agentic Chat in the bigger picture, and we can see it starts fetching the CI/CD YAML from the project and summarizes the key inefficiencies. And some are intended, some are not intended. So I'm also learning. There's an inefficient stage order on this time. Caching is suboptimal. Disabled job with allowed failure, and it's not good practice. Security scanning, parallelization opportunities, and then it comes up with like recommended optimizations. Would you like me to create an optimized version of your GitLab CI/CD YAML? So I could say yes, please do everything, but I'm also a fan of like small iterations. So I would probably say, well, please start with bullet point number 3 or number 4, which I'm not doing now because it will take a while. But the idea really is you can get a summary of what's needed or what will be needed, can validate that, and then continue creating a plan. What you can also do is say, please create an issue for these identified things, and it will go ahead and do that. As a matter of time, I'm leaving this for your, not saying home exercise, but when you try it out, it can be a use case that you get going with. I'm speeding through my other demos. The out-of-the-box agent, which can also be helpful, which is new in 6, is the plan agent. So this is has a specific system prompt to support agile planning and also GitLab planning workflows. Helpful for product managers, has context across issues, epics, merge requests, and can also be helpful when you have an idea and you want to formalize that in a structured plan. In this example, I tried to get a breakdown for the next milestone in the Tanuki Iot Platform project, which has that, but it also has an also healthy backlog. Nobody's working on things, or there might be some delays. This can be a helpful way to actually get an insight and also immediately take actions based on that, whether it's creating or assigning issues or rescheduling something. You can use Agentic Chat as your sort of command center for planning in that sense. And it's a helpful way to use that out of the box. Another thing that's provided out of the box is a security analyst agent. So if you're using GitLab SaaS to advanced SaaS and Ultimate, you can get help with triaging the vulnerabilities here and get a sense of like what is critical or what is super important to fix, but also what is the impact if I don't fix it, or what needs to be done. The security analyst will actively try to create issues in that prompt. I said, please wait for my review before doing anything. So I can tailor that to my own experience. Can also inspect the system prompt for that with custom agents based on that if you want. But this is the real idea that this is provided out of the box, maintained and updated by GitLab. And it's enriching the context from the security scanning insights, but also the repository context or the open issues and anything that's needed. But these are like agents from a flow perspective, and a flow is like a combined step of agents and tasks. Think of it like a real flow going down and then making some decisions and communication. One use case for a flow can be to say, I have an issue, it might be a low-hanging fruit, or it might be something like it's missing a CLI parameter, like here, -- help is not implemented because someone forgot about it, and I can actually generate or use an action to generate a merge request with GitLab Dual Agent Platform, which it then can trigger it in the issue itself, so no context switch needed, get insight into so-called sessions, which is actually the reasoning and the execution of the agents running in the background on the platform compute, and then it comes up with a draft merge request, kicks off the pipelines, you can validate the changes, you can inspect the changes and then continue with code reviews, which is an effective way when nobody has resources assigned or available, you can immediately kickstart it. Could also be a proof of concept for a specific architecture idea and leverage Agentic AI for that. Another use case for issue.mr is documentation is not existing, and in this case the COBOL center doesn't have a README, or it's empty, so it's a production example, and you actually want to use Agentic AI to create that. This is something we can try out. So we have issue 13 here. And let's open that. Someone was so kind to create the issue. Also has some detailed requirements. And here's the button to generate merge request with Duo. Let's click on that. And we can see that the session has been created, which we can view over here. So it's like the detailed view. If you want to continue working, you don't have to stay in this context, because right now it triggered the flow in the background. We also have the sessions on the right-hand side in this menu, which you can, which continues to remain open while you can navigate the rest of the interface. So in this case, we have the flow started here. It doesn't do anything. There's a little cheat, a little tip. The job ID actually links to the GitLab runner that's executing a specific workflow image here. And the idea here is this is running on the shared runners, but you can also bring your own runners. You can customize the image that's being run here, so the workflow is also customizable. For example, for compliance and security reasons, you want to use something else. There's documentation for that. This is very raw, so I don't understand it myself, but you can actually see that it's running on the CI platform. And the really interesting part is the session has been triggered, it fetches the context here. Also make this bigger again, and we can see it creates a merge request, and then we'll continue updating the merge request. So this will take a bit. It will, in my test, it takes like between 2 minutes and 5 minutes, but it's running in the background, so I don't need to be interactive with it. I can just say kicked off, and I can continue working, focus on something else. And just think of like it's just one issue. Maybe you want to kickstart that for 3 issues or 5 issues, or collaborate directly and focus on more pressuring work, for example. Fine. And I like that because sometimes writing documentation is just, it's interesting, but it takes quite some time. Another way to think about using Agentic AI is to automatically fix the pipeline. So there is an icon or an action within GitLab when the pipeline has failed, directly from the merge request pipeline view. So it uses the same flow principle, analyzes what's wrong, the agents are reasoning together, and continue creating a fix for that. So it will either create a merge request inline suggestion or create a new merge request. It's a to be configured workflow, but it can be helpful to automatically fix pipelines without parsing log stack traces. I would recommend trying that out in your environment. If you're using Jenkins, I heard some people might still be using it, or maybe not. There's a flow that can automatically convert a Jenkins file into GitLab CI/CD. So there's a button in the view, it creates a draft merge request, the pipelines are running in GitLab, and then you can verify automatically that the migration was successful. There's also a white paper link from GitLab Professional Services who did a deep dive into other CI systems and how to use Agentic AI to help with the migration, and also like a long-term planning included. Last but not least, we also have another flow on the platform, which is code review. You might recognize that from the enterprise. This is an enhanced version which uses the flow design with like the sessions. So you get an insight while the agents are doing the code review. The other functionality works similarly. You can enable that automatically for merge requests. You get a suggestion. You can use custom instructions, for example, development style guides, anything that's helpful. And use Agentic AI as a partner for code reviews before human takes over and does the final review, the proof and merge. We also documenting that at GitLab, so we use it on the GitLab project, on the handbook, on the marketing website, and many others. And it's been super helpful to also not just get recommendations for better code, but documentation or anything else. Okay, custom agents and flows. The idea is to provide something out of the box, but also make it available so you can customize it for your own environment. There's an so-called AI catalog, and I can create my own agents in there. That's the current state. So it works in that way that there's currently a web form, but I think there should be YAML or a DSL-specific editor for more automation in the future. Give it a name, give it a description, make it either private or public. And the most important part is the system prompt. For example, say you're an expert in creating high quality code, your behavior, or you kind of should follow the user instructions, and then also specify the output, for example, creating a summary and only focus on the 3 key items. I also like to use murmur charts for better visualization, so you can add that into that. And if you want to configure it in a way to say you're only allowed to create an issue comment or a merge request comment, or you're allowed to create a merge request, for example, can tailor that to your needs, compliance and security requirements. Some agents might be able to run a comment, others not, and this can be configured directly in this configuration for a custom agent. From a usage perspective, it's currently implemented that you can chat with a custom agent. So you open a new Agentic Chat and then select from a specific drop-down that you want to interact with a specific agent. Works the same way as we did before. Ask a question, like in this case, a modernization issue, reference that, get a summary, get help, and it's really tailored to a specific optimization system prompt, if you will. A use case that I've tested, and this is all public, like debugging specific failures, like more focus on DevOps or SRE, and get immediate output and, for example, root cause analysis on that crash we previously tried to fix in the IDE. This can be a fun way. There are so many more ideas and use cases, so I can only share a few of them. The next one which I tried was a fun one, which is onboarding, just to understand how to influence Agentic AI or LLMs and responses. I said, well, explain everything like I'm 5, which is kind of funny, asking what are IoT sensors, and then it comes up with a more like playful, high-level way. Test it, don't put it in production for colleagues, unless you don't like them. But yeah, it's talk like a parrot or behave like Clippy. Tested it all, it makes development more fun. But certainly it can be a way to make onboarding more lively. I also played around with localized support. So I created an agent that speaks German and was Austrian. I speak a mix of Upper Austrian dialect and others. So, and yet I will show that quickly live. But just to give you an overview, there is a ticket coming in, and this is an example from doing many years of open source community support. Something is kaputt and no information at all in the issue basically. And bitte ASAP fixen, weil der Kunde hat schon angerufen. So yeah, and I want to use a custom agent to kind of summarize that and analyze that. Let's see if it works. We have the kaputt sensor here. And on the side, we can create a new chat, which is the localized German-Austrian. So we can see it switches the scope here. Did I say, bitte, war mit dem nicht? Problem is I have a US keyword, but let's see if it works. Yeah, the system prompt is start everything with Euler Damavos. And the joke works. Finally, in Vienna and Austria, the joke works. In Berlin, nobody laughed. So it's a mix of English and German now, but der COBOL-Sensor sammelt keine Metriken und spuckt nur kryptische Fehlermeldungen aus. Der User braucht es dringend für die Produktion. Passt. Das braucht man nur, das macht eigentlich immer. Soll dem User eine Nachricht schreiben und die fehlenden Infos anfordern.
So können wir es
Ja, bitte sofort Jetzt einfach weil ich Patterns habe. Schauen wir mal, was passiert. I didn't test that before, so pushing out proof. And I'm talking a little over. Ich habe den Event passt. Soll ich in der Zwischenzeit schon mal im Code nach COBOL Center suchen, damit ich vorbereitet bin? Sonst wird ja weg. Wahrscheinlich schwierig oder so. Yeah, we could ask which Java is. It has created an issue note, so if we switch back to this one. Oh, it worked. So it's using my identity in that way, so I'm authenticated in Agentic Chat, and it kind of uses a composite identity in that way that it runs sandboxed only with the permissions it needs, but it's using my profile here to post. Danke und LP. And this makes my day that the demo worked. Quickly test it out, it's fine. You can customize many things. So custom rules are a way to describe the development cycle, but also the behavior for agents. You can make them more efficient in saying here are the tests, or run specific things, or don't run specific things. And this is quite intense. So, I would recommend doing iterations, start small, and continue working with the teams to modernize and to improve that. There are different ways to do that. There's chat rules, which are currently available on the project level in the Git repo. The teams are working on user space level and also Agents.md support, which are linked here. There's also some tutorials for code reviews. There's also specific rules. I've tested this list last week of languages that are supported. So it's like helpful for probably anything that you write. And there's also some use case examples from the GitLab production linked here, like we're using it for the handbook, for example. Integrations. The teams are also working on a CLI. So you have it on the terminal. The idea here is similarly to having a chat in the IDE and in the UI. You have it on the terminal. And just to show you how it works, it uses an agent access token, which I configured already. You run duo, it will authenticate, see it on with my nickname, provides a summary. Idee war mit dem Projekt, Projekt mit GitLab. Project doesn't provide that. So again, it could be German, could be Austrian, could be English, but you can see it uses the tools. It's very transparent in how it works, and it's actually pretty fast in that context. For some reason, it spreads a little off. It's a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller. It also finds a build directory, which I didn't add. So yeah, and then I can continue with the same flow, like please create something for me, or please create an issue, anything that comes to mind. This is very early, but you can already try it out using the command here. If you want to modernize something, I've also tested it with Java 8 to 21 modernization example. So this also works fine in that way that it also compiles and builds and tests the Java packages, and then creates merge requests, updates the issues. So everything is automated in our wonderful DevSecOps workflows. External agents are also possible. I'm not diving deep into that now, just keep it at the top of mind if you want to run Claude or Gemini, you can also integrate that. This question came up before. GitLab has an MCP server which is in development, so you can integrate that with, I've tested Cursor, Claude, twice, Gemini, GitHub Copilot, OpenAI Codex. What's missing on that slide is continue and set. There are different transport types, different tools available. The teams are working on expanding that, so if you need anything specific, please let us know from the feedback issue or directly. There's also MCP clients, so that you can add other clients on the IDE, like for example Jira, into GitLab context or Agentic AI context. Yeah, there's a lot. Sessions is something that I've shown before. This is the idea to show everything transparently what agents are doing and help you debug and troubleshoot. It's just also a reason why we introduced a new GitLab UI to make it more approachable with everything else. There's also the knowledge graph, which is in development, providing additional or more improved context, so like indexing the entire source code repository. This repository I'm using here is quite fast. The GitLab repo with 85K files, I think, takes a minute or so, and then you can create references not only between source code, but the IDEs across the SDLC, so you can reference issues with function calls, bugs, dependency problems, and so on. But this is in development right now, so like nothing I can show. But keep it in mind for next year if you want to give it a try. Also like compliance, excluding things, authentication, I mentioned where the flows can run, like which workflow image and which runner and so on. Also important, especially for leading and security teams, if you want to introduce AI into your production environment. And last but not least, self-hosted in that way that it runs in offline environments. Nothing gets extended to the cloud. Self-hosted models in a similar way, and also agents and flows on the GitLab self-managed runners, and the model selection as an example on the right-hand side here. So this is also coming, because it's in beta, just to keep it in mind for next year, I would say, because it's December. So yeah, efficiency, why? Automate something boring, understand code, focus on innovation, and my recommendation is, because it's a lot, and this talk evolved from September from 0 to this one, try to identify pain points that you hate or that your teams find tedious, define those use cases and see what's already there, and then iterate on it, learn together, try things out, let us know how things go. If something is not working well, also let us know, please. And experiment with that. Anything else? Yeah, this is how to get started. The slides are public, so this is the QR code, but you will also get them. And this is on your LinkedIn if you want to connect. That being said, thanks for your attention. Sorry for talking over. And I'm around for questions the entire day.